a nod of approval. But you know, it is interesting because if you look at Triple H, okay, if that was his idea back then, look how far and different he's looking at things now, especially with NXT and a lot of the indie guys that he's signing. And you look at the more recent UK venture that he's had, and you know who they put the title on there. Obviously, Triple H's outlook is probably a lot different to how it was back then. So you know he's the one thing with Triple H that's good is he's always seems to want to evolve and adapt, which is a good thing. Whereas I think you know perhaps Vince McMahon himself hasn't always had that sort of that gift where he can you know change his mind about things, and he's very maybe a little bit sort of stuck in his old ways. Not to say he's not successful, because obviously Vince McMahon, the most successful wrestling promoter there is on the planet, but Triple H definitely for the future now looks like he's not just looking at the same old, and he is a little bit more open and willing to look all over the place. And so the guys that he's signing, you know, you look at your Finn Balor's and AJ Styles, you know, that wasn't something that WWE was going for, you know, even 5 years ago. So he's definitely he's definitely doing that, and I'm sure you probably agree the same there, Matt. That his outlook would be different, right?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I mean, it's so evident, isn't it, with NXT
we got Bob Paisley. Sorry. Do you think Charlotte will hold a streak like Taker did, and cement a legacy like the Taker did? So, Matt, for you, does Charlotte have that potential to keep this streak going and going, so that it sort of makes its own huge thing?
Well, it's already a new record, isn't it, on your sort of debut to go that many consecutive title pay-per-views undefeated. That's
Absolutely.
Already down there in the books, I guess. So I would hope that she can keep it going, though. You know, they've gone so far with it now. You know, why not just run with it? And unless someone is going to have a real reason to take that off of her, I don't just want to see it taken just for the sake of swapping the title. Even though, you know, we could use the title to build up another superstar, no question about that, because Charlotte is well established now. But it's good to have new things in wrestling, you know, and like they did with the New Day breaking the tag team titles, it took a long time and people were getting tired of it, but it's nice when they break things like that, like especially with CM Punk when he was the champion and he went on that ring. That was a great time to watch wrestling because we were breaking new ground. And similarly with Charlotte now, and you know, it's a incredibly difficult feat to do that without making it go stale, you know, and people are still watching Charlotte's matches and still thinking that she's an incredible wrestler and they enjoying the matches. So as long as that continues, I don't see any reason to break it.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I totally agree with Matt, what Matt's just said there. Okay, stay lucky now. Do you think John Cena will ever turn heel? No, would be my quick answer to that. I just think it's gone too long now, and John Cena's legacy, pretty much now, I think Matt should be remembered that this guy, he was always the guy that never gave in to all that type of stuff. And you consider the amount of feuds he's had up against guys like Nexus and Bray that have always tried to bring him down to that level. I just think it wouldn't make any sense now at this stage of his career. What about for you, Matt?
Yeah, I don't think there's any way they can turn him heel. Even like when we saw him fighting The Rock, and then everyone assumed The Rock was the good guy, John Cena's the bad guy.
Yeah.
You know, it didn't pan out that way. It was more just like John Cena is who he is. He's not. You couldn't even class him as a bad guy because he'd still just be John Cena. You know, unless he goes out there to deliberately criticize the fans and that. But that's all petty and that's all beneath his kind of character these days.
Absolutely. Okay, now we've got Rad. Did you see Booker T on the pre-show at Rumble? HBK looked really pissed off with Booker's stupid jokes. Booker is horrible in this spot on the pre-shows. No, I didn't see that. I'd have to go back and look at that. But listen, it wouldn't surprise me if Shawn Michaels kind of got enough of him, because Booker T is horrible in that position. Matt, for you, do you enjoy Booker T's rants and weirdness going on?
Nah, well, you know, all I use the pre-shows for is to watch the matches. If there's little bits in between, and like, unless it's something important, I usually just fast forward through the pre-shows. I mean, the pay-per-views are long enough these days.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, totally with Matt. That doesn't surprise me that would have happened. Jennifer M. Now, I think WWE would benefit from signing Young Bucks and Kazarian and Daniels. Also, do you think WWE should break up the New Day? Well, first of all, with Young Bucks, Kazarian and Daniels, you obviously Ring of Honor prime. The thing is with those guys is, would WWE allow them to be how we see them now? And to be honest with you, those two teams, they're kind of already recognised as some of the best tag teams in the world, and they kind of don't have to be in WWE to get that recognition, because I think people kind of know that the tag team wrestling in WWE isn't really overly fantastic, and you had the Briscoes in with that as well. You probably say Ring of Honor kind of does it better. What about for you, Matt? Would that be something you'd look at for WWE to get?
I don't know. I would say Christopher Daniels, he's an amazing talent, but he's older than he looks. And WWE might consider that and think, we've got guys down on NXT, half his age, that could fill that spot. I'm not saying that they couldn't use him for a short-term kind of plan, but from Daniels and Kazarian's point of view, they should be looking at people like the Club who've come up and what they've done with them, and think, well, we don't want to sit around for a year, while they figure out how to use us correctly.
Sure.
But during that year, they could be putting off more amazing matches and headlining more main events and that, and just being awesome. So I would say that they're in their best place right now, going around the Ring of Honor and Japan and that, than just putting on great shows, rather than with WWE. I'm not sure WWE would know how to use them.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, let's go to the next the next question. We got Jennifer. We got Raj. I would first like to say thank you for all the great shows. Listened since episode 6, all the way from Pakistan. To you, what do you both consider to be more worthy? A 16 times winning the title, or holding the title long, like a Bruno Sammartino or Lou Fez? Thank you so much. Well, thank you, Raj, for your email there. Really appreciated, and good to know you've been listening and since episode 6. So it's been a long time. So thank you, Raj, as always. And Matt, so it's a I think we've had may have spoke about this, I think, in the past. But what for you as a fan, Matt, do you take more as a worthy feat? Is it the amount of times a guy has won the heavyweight championship, but then at the same time you got to think, well, they've also lost it almost as many times, or is it the idea of somebody holding the title for so many days, and obviously, like you said, a Bruno Sammartino or a Lou Fez, or do you look at somebody like a Ric Flair or a John Cena, Matt, as the bigger? What's the bigger feat for you?
Well, this is going to be a tough one to call, because if we're looking at someone like Bruno and we're thinking in his day and the way he held that title and how long he held that for, it would be completely different in this day and age. I do think holding the title is a more difficult feat, but that's only because I'm thinking about wrestling the way it is today, and how fickle people are and how quickly they change their minds about who their favourite wrestlers are and how long it takes them before they get bored of a wrestler's moveset or their style in the ring or the way they talk on a mic, and then they want to see someone new come along.
Sure.
But I'd say if Bruno was doing it nowadays instead of when he did it, he would not have held that title that long.
Yeah.
That's why I would say if I was gonna take it in the middle ground, I'd say CM Punk has the greatest achievement, because he held it the longest in the modern era, and that, I think, is the most impressive kind of run with a title that I can remember.
Yeah, it's a difficult feat, because you look at Ric Flair. He went around so many territories back in the day, doing sort of near enough hour-long matches, and defended the NWA title all over the place, and still decade after decade still managed to get hold of titles. John Cena, obviously, an incredible feat to where he's got to now, but it's really difficult. I kind of they're almost like parallel, but In a sense, for me as a fan, I appreciate the length of time. I think more than I do for the amount of times the guys won. And it's not to say it doesn't mean any less, but I think it certainly is harder to keep that up, because you've got to remember, if you're like the only thing I'll say with CM Punk is maybe it was a little bit easier because you had 2 titles at the time. That's another thing, I suppose. But I remember when Brock Lesnar held the title, and I know he wasn't wrestling every week, but it did seem to make the title bigger when it was kept on one guy for a long time. So I think it does do the title more when it's sort of like not just sort of bounced around all the time. So there are lots of different ways of looking at it, and I think it depends on the individual more than anything. Because if you go to Bruno Sammartino, you go, that's an incredible. You look at Lou Thesz, he had it for nearly like sort of years and years. Like 4 or 5 years. I mean, it's an amazing feat, and he was doing again very lengthy matches. In a time where there was only the elite of the elite, so it's difficult to really frame. So I think it all depends on the individual in that circumstance. To be quite honest with you, on that one, but a great question nonetheless. Let us know what you think, Raj, as well next time. Last question now, then, Matt. We're gonna wrap things up on time, I think, tonight, as it happens. Aaron now, do you agree the underbelly of the past few WrestleManias are very weak, and it's more about main events, matchups, rather than seeing the Intercontinental Championship defended in a singles match, i.e. Ricky Steamboat, Macho Man, Bret, Rowdy Roddy Piper? Doesn't seem to be much on the middle card anymore. It seems all about the main eventers. Matt, what do you think about that? Because obviously, just looking at WrestleMania in the past few years, they've obviously clustered a lot of the mid-carders together in sort of, ladder matches, 7, 8 guys in it sometimes, and then these battle royals. Is it a case of when you get to WrestleMania, it is all centered around the sort of big main event matches, and there isn't as much, like they wouldn't do sort of like a big full out kind of, I don't know, like if we was to think like this year, for instance, they probably wouldn't have Chris Jericho versus Sami Zayn for the United States title, that type of thing.
Yeah, it definitely feels like they gear it up for the box office smashes, don't they? They're like, you won't see this anywhere else.
Yeah.
They want your Goldberg and your Brock on there, and I think last year's one is a bad one to compare because last WrestleMania was probably one of the worst WrestleManias I've seen. But just taking the last few years as a whole, it definitely has that feeling. And where all the hardest working wrestlers there that slog it out like week after week are just thrown in a match where there's 6 of them climbing up a ladder for a title, the Intercontinental title. Or if we take, for example, Zack Ryder winning that match only to lose it like shortly after in an incredibly short amount of time, you just kind of wonder, well, what was the point? These guys are the hard workers of the company, and they do sort of play second fiddle to part-timers. I'm not going to disrespect Sting. Sting's a great wrestler. He's had like so much history in wrestling and done so many great moments, but to come back and take a WrestleMania top spot, at his age, and put on, it's no offense to the guy, but he was working at an advanced age, and it was a very underperforming match. It just feels like it had no place at a Mania almost. It's like it should have been at a pay-per-view, but showcase and reward the wrestlers that you have that work so hard.
Yeah, I think my miss about WrestleMania, the way the cards develops now, and it's been, I can't remember the last time I really watched a paceful night, but it used to always be centered around, Matt, like maybe one main event, maybe 2 at best. Now we get 4, 5 that they like to sort of tell us all at once, and all the other matches, they're kind of like sort of enhancement matches where they're just to sort of like, they're for the live crowd to get them ready for the next kind of thing. They're just sort of like matches in between, just to get everybody revved up, and so they might be either really pacey or battle royals or ladders, they're those kind of things. But the talent in them, obviously, if they were in singles matches or doing other things, it would be used better. I do miss that slow build, Matt, to get into a serious main event. Like you kind of build it and build it and build it, and then you're there. Like Japan still does it. Like if you look at Wrestle Kingdom, they still do that. But for WrestleMania, it's become such a